Your body has become a battlefield, not from war or disease, but from a civil war of the soul. That tension in your shoulders, the insomnia, the way your gut clenches when you scroll past that name, these aren't random symptoms. They're mutinies, your biology rebelling against the lie that guilt can be dissolved with affirmations and sage smoke. Here's the silent holocaust of the self-forgiveness era. Unprocessed guilt doesn't vanish. It metastasizes. The body keeps the ledger. Every self-betrayal you've forgiven calcifies. The time you gaslit yourself into staying with a toxic partner, your lower back now aches with the weight of that denial. The career choice that trampled your values, your migraines pulse in time with stock market ticks. Psychosomatic illness isn't myth. It's the body's last-ditch effort to voice what the mind has gagged. Studies reveal that chronic guilt triggers systemic inflammation, alters gut microbiota, and shrinks the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. You're not just holding on to the past. You're embodying it. Like a tree growing around a fence post, your cells absorb the poison of unearned absolution. The cognitive contagion. Guilt rewires thought itself. Confirmation bias. From hell, you unconsciously seek evidence of your worthlessness. Moral Dunning-Kruger effect. The less integrity you have, the more you believe in your own righteousness. Amygdala hijacking. Every minor failure triggers fight or flight, not because you're in danger, but because your psyche now equates imperfection with annihilation. This is how a missed deadline becomes proof you're a fraud. How a raised voice from a stranger confirms you're unlovable. Jung called this enantiodromia, the tendency of suppressed truths to emerge as their opposites. The guilt you refuse to face mutates into paranoia, perfectionism, or worse, moral apathy. The societal spiral zoom out. When millions of people are drowning in unprocessed guilt, you don't get a mental health crisis, you get cultural autoimmune disease. Political polarization, projection of self-loathing onto the other side. Performative activism, virtue signaling as guilt laundering for complicity. Conspiracy epidemics. The mind would rather believe fantastical lies than face its authentic shame. Nietzsche saw this coming. Distrust all in whom the impulse to punish is powerful. The colleague who rage tweets about corporate greed while exploiting interns? The influencer preaching sustainability from a private jet? They're not hypocrites. They're canaries in the coal mine of collective guilt decay. The addiction paradox. Here's the cruelest twist. The more you forgive your vices, the more you need them. Alcoholics Anonymous figured this out a century ago, hence the insistence on rigorous moral inventory. But modern wellness culture peddles forgiveness as permission. You're only human. Have another drink, another scroll, another hit. Neuroscience confirms the trap. Each time you absolve a relapse, dopamine receptors downregulate, requiring bigger transgressions for the same rush. The anterior cingulate cortex, moral regulator, atrophies from disuse. The ventral striatum, reward center, becomes a slot machine stuck on loss. You're not recovering. You're engineering a tolerance for self-betrayal. The relationship Chernobyl watch. What happens when two guilt-ridden souls collide? Your partner's innocent comment becomes a landmine. Not because of their words, but because they echo the accusations you've been silencing with mantras. Friendships dissolve under the weight of unspoken resentments masquerading as boundaries. Parenting becomes a minefield of projected self-loathing. "I'll make sure my child never feel what I feel," becomes, "Why are you so sensitive?" Huxley's Brave New World warned of this, a society numbed by pleasure, incapable of authentic connection. But even Soma couldn't compete with the modern arsenal of Netflix, SSRIs, and Instagram forgiveness posts. The death of moral courage. Ancient Athenians ostracized citizens who threatened democracy. Today, we ostracize those who remind us of our compromises. The coworker who refuses to fudge numbers becomes a toxic pariah. The friend who names your toxic patterns gets labeled judgmental. Movements demanding real accountability get dismissed as woke extremism. This is guilt's endgame, not personal suffering, but ethical extinction. When Jung warned that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, he wasn't talking about self-love. He meant staring into the abyss of your contradictions and choosing integrity anyway. The generational inheritance. Your unborn grandchildren are already collateral damage. Children don't inherit trauma, they inherit your relationship with it. That daughter watching you forgive your daily moral compromises learns to mute her own conscience. That son witnessing your performative activism absorbs that values are just aesthetics. The Navajos say, "We are the ancestors of the future." What rituals are you crafting? What unspoken rules are you etching into their DNA? The spiritual black market. Organized religion's decline didn't kill the soul. It drove it underground. Fitness cults peddle absolution through sweat. Tech gurus promise salvation via productivity. Eco-warriors preach redemption through reusable straws. This isn't progress. It's guilt alchemy, transmuting existential debt into consumerist rituals. The 14th century flagellants, at least, drew blood. Modernity's self-flagellation happens via LinkedIn humblebrags and silent retreats. But here's the crack in the dam. Your suffering isn't punishment, it's prophecy. That chronic fatigue? A warning that your lifestyle is unsustainable. That rage at social injustice? Proof your moral compass still works. That existential dread? The birth pangs of a self you've yet to become. The trap is set. The water's rising. But in the next section, you'll discover something revolutionary. The very guilt you've been running from holds the blueprint for your liberation.